Hey everybody, I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about one of my all-time favorite decks of Modern, which is Grixis Delver. Now, immediately you're going to ask, why is this one of my favorite decks of Modern? And the reason being is it's extremely interactive. It's not trying to do the Modern thing and win on turn 3 or win on turn 4. It's small incremental damage. It's mana efficiency. It's a lot of cool spells, and it's a lot of control. Now, if we're talking Grixis, there's the comparisons between Grixis Delver, Grixis Control, and now, Amazon's trying to sell me more stuff, and Grixis Death Shadow. All three of those decks I'm a fan of. All three of those decks I think are good and have their place in the format. But today we're going to talk about Grixis Delver. If you're watching this, I assume you're either interested in playing Grixis or you're just trying to learn about it or something of that sort. If you are interested in playing Grixis, I think this is where you should start, is right with a basic list of Grixis Delver. I've pretty much tried every card you could possibly think of in this color combination in Modern. So if anyone wants to comment below and they're recommending Murderous Cut or Cryptic Command or Ancestral Visions or anything of the sort, I've tried it. I've done it. Even Planeswalkers, all types of lists. What's in front of you, I know works. And if you're looking for a good deck list, I guarantee you this is a good place to start. Okay, so let me just quickly go over how it works, talk about a few of the unique interactions and the things I feel you actually need to know. Let me go to my card viewer here. Okay, so how does the deck win? There's two primary win conditions in my mind. One is Delver of Secrets, which is a 1/1 for 1. And at your upkeep, you can reveal an instant or sorcery. If you do, it flips into a 3/2 flyer. So you can have a 3/2 flyer attacking on turn 2. That's the game plan, right? In this list, you have a total of 29 instants and sorceries, so virtually half the deck. So it's pretty much guaranteed that it's going to flip if you get this down on turn 1. The other win condition is Tasigur the Golden Fang, and this is also a similar theme as Delver. You're trying to basically cheat out a overpowered creature for very little mana. So you can delve away spells, dump stuff into your graveyard, play cheap 1-drop stuff, and get him out. Essentially, the game plan is to get him out for just one black, and you're good, and you have a 4/5. One thing to note that I wasn't aware of when I first started piloting this deck is you have to be aware which of these two win conditions you're on. And to think that you're going to be invested into both is kind of silly and not realistic. Although you can sometimes be on the Delver plan and drop Tasigur late game, and that's a thing. But depending on who your matchup is, you really need to allocate your resources on one of the two. And let me give a couple examples just so you know what I'm talking about. If we were playing against Burn, Delver Secrets is basically useless. It's pretty much, it's going to get removed. There's that 3 power clock is basically useless against Burn because they can race faster than us. And it's just like you don't have enough counter magic to hold up. You don't have enough resources to keep them on the board, so it's going to get removed. You might as well turn 1, go with something else. However, Tasigur, if we're playing against Burn, they can't really remove him with one singular spell from most lists. So they're going to have to waste two spells on him. And that's where you want to be. This is going to be a problem for them. So if I'm going to play against Burn, immediately I'm on the Tasigur plan. I'm going to try to play the control game until I get him down, and then suddenly we kind of take control of the game. Contrary, if I was playing against something like Tron or ban Eldrazi or Eldrazi Tron or something, suddenly your 4/5 Tasigur isn't too big. It's not very impressive. It's not a huge threat. However, a 3/2 flyer is something that those decks have trouble with. They usually don't have a lot of removal, especially if you're talking like Eldrazi Tron. Them maybe have like 1 or 2 like Dismember or spatial contortion or something like that. Like, not a lot of ways to get rid of this. So that being said, you want to put them on that clock, and you want to be all in on getting Delver there and then playing the control route after the fact. So very important to know which one of these two plans you're on when you're playing this deck, piloting it. It's something you have to learn over time, and each matchup is going to be a little bit different. And certain matchups, you don't even care which one of these. It could be one or the other. If you're playing against like Death Shadow is really big right now, like Delver is going to be way more important than Tasigur. If you're going to be playing against other fair decks, like say Tarmogoyf decks or Jund or something, like same thing. Like Delver's way more important than Tasigur. But then on the contrary, if I'm playing against Infect or Affinity or something, like, obviously Tasigur is way more important than Delver, and Delver's pretty much useless against Affinity. So super important. If there's one thing I can stress, it's like just really understanding how those interactions work and like when to keep the opening hands and stuff depending on those matchups. Okay, so obviously creatures, we have 4 Snapcaster Mage because it's a premier blue creature in Modern, and there's be zero reason not to play him. He also provides redundancy to a lot of the spells like Remand, which we have 2 of, Terminate, which we have 2 of, which otherwise we would want a full play set of. But he provides that redundancy, and it's not a big deal. We're also pitching a lot of stuff into our graveyard to make Tasigur happen, so this can kind of recover a lot of those cards for us. There are lists that play Gurmag Angler, and I've tried it. It's okay. The whole thought process behind it is because you have a legendary creature with Tasigur that you don't want to have that 4th copy, and then there's always the very slim, and I stress slim chance that you can get both Gurmag Angler and Tasigur on the board at the same time. In my opinion, I think the one of Vendilion Clique is going to be more important in more matches than the one Gurmag Angler. The ability to loot, the ability to remove a combo piece from opponent's hand, because we don't really have a lot of things a lot of ways to pull things out of other players' hands. We don't run Inquisition of Kozilek, Thoughtseize, anything like that. I have 1 Collective Brutality in the main board and 2 in the side that we can actually pull something out of hand, but that's it. So this can be super important, like against Scape Shift or something like that. Like, we need to pull something out of their hand. Also, it being in the air is also very important. So if we can flip Delver and then 2 turns later we can flash in Vendilion Clique into turn, suddenly we're swinging with like 6 power in the air if we're playing against a fair deck like Abzan or Jund that's using like a Fet Shock kind of mana base. That can put them on a pretty fast clock. Okay, so that's it for creatures. Only 12. Now I'll quickly go over the spells. Like I said, there's a lot of different lists, but any Grixis list, you're pretty much going to see these same cards with a few exceptions. Like if it's going to be control, you're going to see Cryptic Command rather than Spell Snare, and things like that. For removal, I'm going to run 4 Fatal Push, and I've seen people run 3, or some people say 4 is too much. In Modern right now, I think that it's primarily creature-based decks that you're going to go up against. Death Shadow is like a super big deal. Affinity is a super big deal. There's not as much dredge happening right now, so you don't have to worry about amalgams and grave trolls and stuff like that. So Fatal Push just becomes like pretty much like one of the best cards or best removal spells in the format, in my opinion, right now. So there's no sense not to run the full 4. I do run 2 Terminate, and this card's a little bit awkward going for that black-red, because you're pretty much, the way you're going to fetch is going to go, you're going to go blue, black, or blue-red off first one. So usually, like, I don't know, it's just kind of awkward with how the mana base lies down. Eventually, hopefully something comes into the format that can replace this, but for now it's the best option. We have 4 Lightning Bolt, which you'll see in every Grixis list. Originally this was the removal spell, but since Fatal Push is available, and most of the time anything that Lightning Bolt would have gotten rid of in the past, Fatal Push pretty much does a better job anyway. So the main goal with Lightning Bolt now is literally just direct damage to the face. So like Lightning Bolt, Snapcaster, Lightning Bolt, that 6 damage usually can like kind of close out the later part of the game. Or it can be the only way of getting rid of like something out of like Bant Eldrazi. So if you have like Reality Smasher or something that has 5 toughness, like there's your only way of getting rid of it. Okay, and we have Kolaghan's Command. There's a lot of affinity in my local meta, so having 3 is pretty important to me. So you get the discard, but the Shock Shatter like against affinity is huge. So if we have an affinity matchup like 4 Fatal Push, 3 Kolaghan's Command, Lightning Bolt, they're gonna have a hard time. Like especially bringing this back with Snapcaster Mage, it's super awesome. Obviously, it helps against like Mirror Folk. Like things we gotta get rid of Aether Vial, or against Strong, you can get rid of Expedition maps, things like that. But I think 3 is necessary. I see a lot of lists with 2, and to me, it just like they'll do like 2 and then like 1 Murderous Cut, or like 2 and a Spell Pierce, or something like really strange like that. The full 3 is the way to go. Okay, and next let's talk counter magic. And I've tried pretty much any variation you can think of. Like I mentioned, Cryptic Command. I've used Counter Squall, Dispel main board, Spell Pierce. All your primary, counter magic that you have available in Modern. And I find this to be the correct spells and the correct amount of them. So I run 3 Mana Leak, 2 Remand, 2 Spell Snare. At first, like I didn't think Spell Snare was going to be that good. I didn't have it in the list at first. I was using other stuff, and then I was like, "Oh, convert a mana cost 2." Like, yeah, sure, that's all right. You'd be surprised how like super important that is to pretty much every matchup, and you have to start like really thinking about each matchup, what it's going to get rid of. So if I'm playing against Affinity, like I'm holding this for basically cranial plating. That's like my primary target for it. If Death Shadow deck, like obviously Tarmogoyf. Against Burn, we're talking Eidolon. Like you just have to learn like what is that one super annoying problematic spell I need to get rid of for 2 mana, and I guarantee you every deck has it. Now let's talk cantrips. 4 Thought Scour. Now this is gonna help with Tasigur. It's gonna help with Snapcaster Mage, and it's just a way to just like churn through your deck. So we have the 4 Thought Scour, we have 4 Serum Visions, and I I might be wrong in saying this, but I think Serum Visions might be the best card in the whole deck. That draw 1 Scry 2 is pretty good, I must admit. You can also guarantee a flip with Delver. If you get it down like turn 1 and then it doesn't flip, and then turn 2 you can play like Serum Visions, then you can draw a card, scry, make sure you can have a spell on the top for it to flip next turn. Now I run 1 Collective Brutality and 2 in the sideboard. Now it's just an all-purpose card. It really solves a lot of problems. I keep mentioning Burn, and the reason being is that is probably this deck's biggest problem, or for most blue decks, it's the biggest problem, along with Tron. So the sideboard is pretty much set up for those 2 matches. If we're going to go against like Death Shadow, or we're going to go against Affinity, any other fair deck, John, Abzan, Malira combo stuff, we're pretty much okay main board. Like we don't have to change a lot of stuff when we're well set. Mirror Folk we do okay against. Escape Shift, don't really have too much of a problem there, but also the same pieces that we use for Tron are all relevant in that matchup as well. So that being said, the 3 Collective Brutality is super huge. If I was going to go against Burn, I can pull a Burn spell out of their hand, gain a little bit of life, take out a Monastery Swift Spear or a Goblin Guide or something off the field. We also use this card for combo matches. We have to pull something out of their hand, if it's like Ad Nauseam or anything like that. And then also this card is super good against Infect. So if you can take a pump spell out of the hand, get rid of a Blighted Agent, and then do a little bit of damage to that, those are all things that we want to do. And it does a fantastic job at it, because Infect really isn't running a lot of creatures. You basically have like 8 creatures, maybe 10 total, and then Inkmoth Nexus. So getting rid of one of those, or like Boggles too, that's another really good thing, because there's so few creatures in Boggles. If you can somehow, like, before they have any protection up, if you can like get rid of one of their creatures and like pull like an Umbra out of the hand or something like that, that can really like slow them down, because who knows how long before they'll draw another one. Okay, let's go over. I guess I don't have to go too into the mana base. It's pretty straightforward, Grixis mana base. So we are gonna run. I run 8 total fetch lands, 4 Polluted Delta, 4 Scalding Tarn. Some of the newer lists, you'll see Bloodstained Mire, and in the list in front of you, you're going to want to have the Scalding Tarns, but I'm fully support on the Death Shadow list to ditch the Scalding Tarn for Polluted Delta, because now you have Death Shadow and you're running for Fatal Push. Like, there's just so much more of a need for black than there was before when you didn't have those Fatal Push and you were running like Ataxian Probe and other stuff like that. The blue was a little more important. As far as shock lands, I run 2 Steam Vents, 2 Watery Grave, 1 Blood Crypt, and then I run 1 blue-black fast land, and then I run 1 blue-red fast land. I've tried a few other things, like I've tried filter lands, I've tried running like the 4 Polluted Delta full Scalding Tarn, and then like a couple Bloodstained Mires, and then I've also tried like Creeping Tar Pit and like creature lands like that. They're cool. I've also adjusted the quantity. I anywhere as low as 18 all the way up to 21 lands, depending on kind of what's in the main board. But where we're at here, 19 is perfect. I mean, if anything, you could probably get away with 18. This deck's super mana efficient, and almost everything's 1 mana, and you have so many cantrips. Like, you really don't need a lot. If you get like 1 blue-black land, 1 blue-red land, you're pretty much good for the whole game. And then like late game, you'll play a Kolaghan's Command or something, and that's it. Quickly, let me just go over the sideboard here. I mentioned Tron being a problem. So we have the 4 Fulminator Mage here. Also, super cool interaction with that in Kolaghan's Command, like being able to Fulminator Mage, play Kolaghan's Command, bring it back to your hand, play it again, kill another land off. Can be super cool. So you're basically going to bring this in against Tron. You're going to bring it in against Scape Shift. Infect is another one I'll bring this in. Because, yeah, getting rid of Inkmoth Nexus, like, that's the move. You gotta get rid of that thing. They don't have enough creatures. If you can take one of those lands out, that ends up being pretty huge. That's pretty much the only matchups I'll bring these in against. A lot of the stuff is just so mana efficient now. Like, all these Death Shadow lists you see, like, there's no sense bringing it in against that. Like, most of the cards are just gonna be 1 mana. You're not gonna slow them down enough for this to be, like, important. So I've seen a lot of the Living End lists, like, actually pulling the Fulminators out and putting them in the sideboard when they used to run 4 main. And they're also super expensive now. They shot up in price like a ton. I got them like way before that happened. Like, if you're building this deck now, like, these are cool, but you can just like, you can sub them for something else, and like, you don't have to spend $100 on 3 of them. Okay. Another cards that we're going to be using for that Tron matchup, Surgical Extraction. Like, if we could just Fulminator Mage, Tron land, surgically extract it, they're pretty much screwed, and you win. That's like, it's like a scoop, pretty much. We are a graveyard-based deck, so we can't really run a whole lot of graveyard hate. Like, we're just gonna screw ourselves. So all those like graveyard hate we use against Tarmogoyf for like dredge decks and stuff, like, it just hurts us too much. So we just like, this is our only real access to any other graveyard shenanigans. Okay. Also, graveyard shenanigans, I do run 1 Kalatos, and the removal spells in this deck are like super 1-for-1. So if you're gonna go against something that makes like has recursion, like Kitchen Finks or like Malera combo kind of Abzan decks, that's kind of a problem, because like, we don't run a lot of land. We don't have everything's like 1-for-1 on removal. Although we do have Snapcaster Mage, which kind of smooths that out. But that's just a huge problem. So that's when Kalatos is really good. And then sometimes Lifelink's relevant. And it's also just a super awesome creature. Like, in Modern and Standard, it doesn't matter. He's just kind of badass. Okay, for sideboard, I have 2 Dispel. This will be good in, combo, burn. It's good against other fair decks. So if you're going to play against Jund or Absent or something that trying to rip your hand apart. That can be super helpful. Okay, next in that, I already talked about the 2 Collective Brutality. I have 2 Anger of the Gods. Now, you can run different sweepers. Damnation is an option, but hitting 4 mana is kind of hard on this deck. It doesn't happen every game, so Anger is about as good as we have. And we don't run a lot of creatures, so you kind of have to be careful when you're going to use this. Like, it's pretty much only matchups where you're going to be on, like, the task you're playing, or if you absolutely have to, if you're playing against, like, tokens builds or something, then it's important, but I surprisingly don't bring this in that much. May sub it out for something out, open to suggestions, so let me know what you think. It's just like a default to think that you need, like, a sweeper, but I probably don't in this list. I think I'd probably, like, rather have just, like, 2 Liliana of the Veil, like, or something for, like, those slower matchups that do happen, or if I'm playing against, like, a control or, like, a mirror match, like, that would be pretty good. I think I'd be better poised to that, because we're already pretty good against Infinity. We're already good against Infect. We're already good against, like, a lot of, like, super aggro-y decks. We just tend to have, like, problems with, like, more spell-based decks, so I don't know how important this is. Okay, one thing I do use for Sweeper, though, is it Staticaster? Now, like, this thing's super sweet, super underrated card. Just flashing it in, like, doing that 1 damage to creatures, like token strategies, like, this to me is way more important than Anger of the Gods. Like, when Dredge was a serious problem, this was relevant because of Exile, but, like, I haven't played Dredge in a while. Like, they just all vanished for some reason. And I mean, I get it. The deck's not as good after the banning, but it's still, like, a viable deck. Okay, and then lastly, you can use this as a sweeper too, but Engineered Explosives. Now, this card I feel is super important to the sideboard. In our colors, we have no way of dealing with enchantments. We have no way of dealing with Blood Moon, Rest in Peace, like a lot of those cards that just kind of shut us down. So that's where Engineered Explosives come in. It's just like a catch-all for any type of problem thing that could come up. Also, in an Affinity matchup, we're super, like, that's a really good matchup for us, but the one card, like, they're going to sideboard in usually against us that just totally shuts it down is Etched Champion. Like, we have no way of dealing with Etched Champion whatsoever. Like, that's, as soon as that drops on board, we're pretty much going to have to race. And, like, that's not a position I want to be in, especially with this deck that's kind of slow. Like, I do not want to race. So if I'm playing against those, I'll usually board these in because, like, I'll take out something like Mana Leak, like, or Remand. Like, yeah, like, I want to freaking remand something infinite. Like, oh, let me just remand your Ornithopter, and, like, you just play it in. Like, that's stupid. So I'll just take those out, put in Engineered Explosives. You can play it for 3 and just have it chill. Because usually, like, they're going to pull in Etched Champion against, like, control matchups or against, like, a deck like this. So you just need to assume that and then bring these in, play it for 3 mana. As soon as they put down Etched Champion, like, that's their game plan against us. You're going to pop it off and you're good to go. Okay, guys, that's the deck. Huge fan. If you have any questions, comments, anything whatsoever, please let us know. I'd be happy to hear them. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.